Okay, good morning everyone. I'm going to start today with a lecture, and it's going to be a little bit longer. We started looking at a history of psychology, and yesterday I gave you a reading assignment to do. So it talked about kind of how psychology developed as a discipline of study. It actually emerges from two fields, biology and philosophy. Biology being the study of the body, and philosophy being the study of how we think in the mind. So it makes sense that the two of them go together because we know there is a strong connection between physically what's happening in your body and your moods and behaviors, and also the things going on in your mind, how they affect your physical body. So I gave you some reading to do on kind of like an overview of all these different fields, and I hope you found it interesting. Today what we're looking at is this idea. I just want to make sure you have your definitions correct from yesterday. So this PowerPoint is attached and you can go through and make sure you have enough detail on your definitions from the reading. But basically, as not all psychologists are going to agree on what they think the fundamentals are of human behavior or theory. And when it first was developed as a field of study, psychology was a young science, and there was different schools of thought or different schools of thinking about what human behavior is and what motivates it. So some of the ones, the earliest ones you saw in your reading were functionalist, structuralist, like heredity psychology and Gestalt psychology. So the definitions are in your PowerPoint, but these were kind of the early movements. Just to go through it, functionalism, think of the root of the word, which is function. It was looking at how animals and people adapt to their environment and change their behaviors to match or survive in their environment. So it was all about the environment, okay? If we look at structuralists, they were looking at the basic elements of human experience and trying to map out common processes of thought. You'll notice that Wilhelm Wundt, who was the founder of psychology, which you read about in your handout, he set up the first lab devoted to psychology. He was a structuralist. They used a process called introspection, which is widely used by psychologists today. And introspection is this idea that while you're thinking, you are going to speak aloud your thoughts to make you aware of your patterns of thinking. And then psychologists can help to identify these patterns or thoughts of behavior and thinking patterns and help you to be aware of your true feelings and your true emotions. So it's just being aware of your thoughts, which is something that a lot of psychologists utilize today in their field, right? Helping people becoming aware of their thinking patterns. Heredity was that nature side of the nature versus nurture debate. This idea that people are predisposed genetically to behave certain ways, to have certain types of personality, and that what we receive biologically from our parents is a huge influence on us. Heredity psychologists argued again for people with superior skills or superior intelligence to marry and reproduce with other people with strong traits to produce strong offspring. When we do our unit on intelligence, we'll talk about this idea that some psychologists believed intelligence was hereditary. So that if you had smart parents, you'd have smart children, and they encouraged this, and they encouraged people who didn't score high in IQ tests to not have children. So we'll look at that kind of dark history when we do the unit on intelligence. And Gestalt psychologists were all about understanding perception. So when we do our unit on perception, we'll be studying their theory for the most part. But they were interested in how your mind and how the human brain will organize your perceptual world to make sense out of it. And just as an example of Gestalt psychology, these are the principles they discovered. So these are the universal ways that the human mind will organize sensory information. So we like proximity. Things that are close to each other we tend to see as a group. We like to notice similarity between things. We like pattern. We like when things are symmetrical. So if we were looking at this picture, our brains are hardwired to see this. Oh no, I have to go back. How do you shut this? Oh, we'll pause. Pause for a second.